Strangely enough, I had been involved reading the works of William Henry, who was actually the co-author of the book. And William has done an amazing thing in his 14 books. He's taken the history and the mythology, and he's joined it together in such a way that it becomes a new language. So when you read his books, you start walking around the city streets, and you look at things in a whole new light.
It opens your perceptions, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's really actually kind of fun seeing the world in a new light like that. And I went to one of William's seminars, and at the end of the seminar, he puts up a picture of the United States Capitol dome and asks all of us, what is this building? And everybody cries out, that's the United States Capitol. And then he says, what's inside of that dome? And there's silence. And the biggest silence was in my mind, because I had studied Washington and looked at it. And I did not know what was inside of the dome of the United States Capitol. And then he puts up a picture. And the picture is what the book is about, the painting. And he called it Freedom's Gate. Right. And that started a relationship between he and I, where we would travel to Washington over the next year and a half and study Washington, D.C., in particular the Capitol building, and look at this painting. And the things that we found in there were absolutely unbelievable.
Okay, let's get into it then. So we have to start with, what is it, the street layout of Washington, which you say is sacred. Now, why is the street layout of Washington sacred?
Okay. One of the things, if you look at in the photo here, Washington, D.C. is laid out in a square, but it's a square turned on the side. It's a diamond.
Diamond, yeah.
And the diamond can be considered to be a feminine object, a doorway or a gateway. That diamond is surrounded by 40 stone pillars. The number 40 becomes significant because Jesus was in the desert for 40 days.
Yeah.
The Israelites were in the wilderness for 40 years.
It's kind of a journey, transition.
It's a transition.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It's a symbolic statement of that.
Yeah.
Also, there's 2 states on either side of the District of Columbia, and those 2 states are Virginia and Maryland.
Yeah, okay.
So with a little play on words, you go, oh, the Virgin Mary? The Virgin Maryland. So here's this doorway, the Virgin Maryland, and it's called the District of Columbia. So I started wondering, the District of Columbia, where is Columbia that this place is a District of Columbia? With a little research, I found out that it's not exactly a place, but a person, a goddess. Columbia is a goddess, tracing itself all the way back to ancient Babylon. Columbia is the goddess Semiramis. So this land, this place of Washington, D.C., actually becomes a land of goddess worship.
Incredible.
And then you think, of course, of the Statue of Liberty in New York City holding the torch. But again, Washington, D.C. is loaded. David Oveson wrote a book, Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, and showed, and also Charles Westbrook wrote a book, Talisman, where he showed all of the street layouts. And between those 2 authors, it opened up a door for Americans and people around the world that there's something amazing going on in Washington. But one of the things that we noticed is that the District of Columbia is 10 miles by 10 miles square. Now, most people would not think anything of that, but it also says that it's 260 square kilometers. 260 square kilometers is actually the Mayan number for the evolution of consciousness in the Mayan calendar system.
Right.
13 times 20 is 260. 260 is that the human consciousness evolves every 260 days. 260 is how long it takes for a sperm and egg to gestate inside of a woman. So this is a spot of gestation.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible. I mean, it makes me think about the dome.
The dome.
Yeah. So, anything else on that point?
No, that's good.
So that's the street layout of Washington, basically. So what is the sacred geometrical relationship? I'm reading from notes here, so you have to forgive me because it's quite complex stuff. Sacred geometrical relationship between the U.S. Capitol dome and the Washington obelisk. I mean, you can figure that one out just from the shapes, but
sure. In the center of Washington, D.C., we have something really amazing called the Mall. And inside of the Mall, there's 2 main objects that stand out to you there. One is the Washington Monument, The other is the dome. Now, domes right away, when you look at the United States Capitol dome, it reminds you of the Great White Mountain.
Okay.
It reminds you of Mother Earth, where the mountains are places of gestation again, where an initiate can go in and transform themselves in the cave under the mountain. In England, you have a lot of these sites, right? So if you look at the Capitol building, it looks like a great white mountain. It also looks like a dome. Well, it's interesting that humans, when we come into the world, we come through a womb. It's a transition zone. And then we sit in rooms. And then when we die, when we leave the world, we go to a tomb. So from a womb to a room to a tomb, this is a dome. And a doma is a house of God, or a birthing chamber, is what we're looking at here. And when we look at this, here's a picture of the sacred mountain of the alchemists. And inside of there is a place where the initiate can find themselves, can purify themselves, and turn lead into gold. And that's exactly what happens in the United States Capitol building. It's a dome or a sacred space. When you combine that with the idea that the U.S. Capitol is based off of a really old idea, the Vatican, with its dome. And then that traces its idea back to the Pantheon, which is the oldest pagan temple that's still standing in great shape in the world.
Place. Really
Beautiful place. So notice there that even in the Pantheon, that out in front of the dome is an obelisk. Out in front of the Vatican is an obelisk. Out in front of the United States Capitol, an obelisk. So you ask yourself, what's the correlation? Here we see the dome next to a uterus, a birthing chamber. And when they're presented next to each other, it becomes obvious that this is a sacred space where things can change. The Washington obelisk is 555 feet tall. Most people would think nothing of that. It's the tallest obelisk in the world. It's hidden. Look into inches. 555 times 12 inches is 6,660 inches. 666. Not evil, just the symbol of a man. The symbol of man, the physical reality of man. So the Washington obelisk, a male phallic symbol, the dome, a very feminine object, and when you put those two together next to each other, something amazing happens. An energy vortex occurs. Some investigation needs to go into this. I'm not an engineer or a physicist, but if the Vatican's doing it, if the Pantheon does it, and if Washington, D.C. is doing it, putting an obelisk in front of a dome, then we need to look at this and figure out what's going on there.
I mean, that's fascinating. That probably, for a lot of people who were following that so far, and then we get a bit of a leap of the imagination with this energy vortex stuff that starts to twist out of it. But people need to understand that even in sound, in great cathedrals, etc., energy was utilised. So light energy, sound energy, you know, there are places in cathedrals where you would stand and you would say, it says speak here, and you can hear it in the entire cathedral, whatever it is you spoke. Even, no matter how low, it resonates. So they were really, really clever at utilising frequencies, the ones you can hear, the ones you can see, and maybe other ones too. And we know, don't we, when with old stone circles and monoliths and megaliths, etc., that there is some real good scientific evidence that they were actually manipulating earth energy in various ways. Some of it in actually to make the ground more fertile. So something's going off here, and maybe it has got something to do with some kind of fertility. And fertility of mind, which is key to what Washington would be about.
Sacred geometry.
Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating.